All right. Well, welcome everyone. Specifically, thank you and welcome to the Fosses for joining us today. We've been making this sneak peek segments up until now, but what I want to do is I want to make sure that we're really the premise is not just maximizing the assets of a couple, but also the fact that what are the underlying reasons for that. And so the bosses have graciously been willing to share their story with us. And so we're just going to jump in. We have 1 hour together. I don't know that we're going to have time for questions at the end, but I hope that this will serve as the referral that they can be to you for what we've done together. And so I'm just going to jump in. The reality is, in order to enter this big scary space of financial advisors and financial just well, the financial industry itself in general is just a big scary dark hole for most people. And the fact that the Fosses know just how lucky they were to have had the opportunity to have a friend that they were willing and able to leverage the trust in that friend in order to be able to take a leap. And even more so, not just the industry being a big scary place, but also the fact that trying to select somebody to work with becomes an even almost as big, if not a bigger issue. So let's face it, let's just get it on the table. Trust is essential. Without it, without some sense of trust, regardless of who you're going to work with, me in this case, we're not going anywhere, right? So, and also the fact that if we really think about it, a couple's financial world really is about as sensitive as it comes, other than what's going on in the bedroom. But other than that, the decisions that maybe you've made in the past that can include things like bad financial decisions, but even situations that were financially out of your control can really bring some shame. And so just simply sharing that with somebody can be a very, very difficult task, right? So this is why I have created what I have on social media and on webinars. This is why all of this exists, is so that we can really bridge the gap between what it's really like to work with me as an advisor, so that in this case, the Fosses can share so that they can serve as that referral like they received. Mm-hmm. So my first question to you two is, think about in the moment when I asked you to share your financial situation with me. This is way back when we got started, all those years ago. And what I'd like to know is, can you share, each of you, how you overcame that sort of, gulp of sharing your dirty laundry with me after receiving the referral from Chad?
Sure. You want to go first?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Well, I think it's, for me, it's two things. One, obviously Chad being a really good friend, I trust him. He obviously had trust in you and was already engaged with what you do. So I think part of that piece, being able to talk to him about what they're doing and understanding the process a little bit, just having these off the cuff conversations warmed me up to that, as well as just knowing that we were in a tough position as we were, and it just felt like doing what you're supposed to do wasn't necessarily working very well for us. And so trying to find another solution. And so just that being in that mental state I think helped with getting comfortable with just, I mean, what do I have to lose? I mean, it's at this point, it can only get hopefully better with just looking into different opportunities. So yeah, that was my headspace at the time.
How about you, Kendra?
We had both come into our relationship with different financial struggles. I had a lot of school debt and was just essentially poor. And Jared just had some consumer debt, but was in a much more stable spot. And I think we had early on agreed to do it together. And that's not every couple, you know, we're I don't know that it's unique, but it's definitely, I think, maybe more half and half, where couples are either like managing their money as their money or together. And we've always taken the together approach. And so for me, since we already had that foundation of this is our money, and we're going to manage it together, we're going to try to figure out, you know, it's not just your debt, or it's not just the fact that you don't make any money. It's like our problem. I leaned, you know, just really heavily on my husband when he decided to jump in and trust you. I was like, okay, I'm here for it. So I think that foundation made it easier for us to be on the same page with moving into a relationship with you, and really trusting you with all of the mess that we were in.
We're going to get into that mess, by the way. We're also going to get into your commitment to each other as well. So I want to come back to that, but go ahead. Sorry.
No, that was it.
So you made comment about, you know, your trust and being willing to, you know, follow the leader, so to speak, in your household, right? So what I'd like to know is, what was your, like, how did I keep earning your trust, you know, step after step? Like, how did I occur to you? Like, what was my response when you know, shared the dirty laundry, so to speak?
I'll jump in first. I didn't have any, I didn't come in feeling a lot of shame. I didn't come in knowing how to get us out of the situation that we were in. And we wanted to start a family, and I just didn't feel like it was a wise thing to do because of where our finances were. And the way that you responded to our mess was not like, how could you have gotten into this mess? You know, it wasn't this like, I didn't feel any shame. I felt better educated. I felt like there was possibilities that there were possibilities that I had never thought of before, that I didn't even know existed. And that there was a different path that made more sense in the long run. So I came away from that initial, like, here's all of our mess, feeling like, and here's a path out of it. And that solidified for me that that I could trust you because it wasn't like, you will walk on that path or you will take this path. It was just like, here are options that are a way out. And I just felt better educated. I just felt like you were teaching me something, instead of like, shame on you. Why did you get, you know, there's no way out of this unless you drop, you know, this and this and this and this. It was just a better direction, an option for a better path.
Yeah, that's the same for me. There wasn't any judgment. It was, let's just see what you have, and then let's talk about it. And from there, the education of just different options of what's out there, and essentially you letting us figure it out for ourselves, but here's the information so that you can figure it out. You know, I would say that you're trying to lead us down the path, but letting us figure out what the solution is, coming to our own resolution. And you know, if in the end, if we didn't agree with it, well, then we would have, you know, we probably would have gone different directions. But in this case, I mean, for us, the options that we talked about and different ways to navigate through this financial world made a lot of sense to us when we started receiving the numbers, receiving information from you, doing our own research, and it just made sense. And it kind of fit not just financially, but also philosophically and you know, personally, how we aligned ourselves with each other. So
Awesome. You know, the idea of putting a big fat F on your paper or something like that. So, you know, that, because that can happen. People have had those experiences out there. And yeah, it's like, this is your situation is, as much as everyone may think, to you, the audience out there, as much as you may think that your situation is so unique, there are tons of people, and we're going to get into it a little bit more so that you get a better grasp on exactly what we're talking about. But this webinar is exactly what I said before. This is intended to provide you with some insight. You know, life is hard enough out there, and it hits, you know, you don't need me to pile on. You certainly don't need somebody who's supposed to be your advocate, you know, adding to the punches. And what I can tell you is that I have personal experience in getting punched in my own life too, and even outside of the financial part of it. So I'm dyslexic, and when I was young, when I was in school, I had to figure out a way to survive. And this is what most people are doing with their finances anyway. They're trying to figure out a way to survive without actually bringing an expert to help them. So for me, back in the day, you know, those of you who used to go to school in a classroom,
What's that?
I know. But what they do, you guys probably remember this, right? So they would go around the room and they would have everyone read a paragraph. You know, they would kind of go around the room. And so what would happen for me is, wherever I was sitting in the room, I would actually count the number of people until they got that. So I knew which paragraph I was going to have to read. Heaven forbid somebody got up and went to the bathroom that was somewhere in between us, because that would screw up everything for me. But I would actually read and reread and read and reread that paragraph so that I didn't have the what I will refer to as flop sweat to be reading out loud
Yeah. Yeah.
during a class like that. So like what most people are doing in their financial world, I had to do scary and different things to overcome the anxiety, the reading ahead, in order to survive. Now, here's the tragedy of just trying to survive, is the fact that I wasn't gaining any ground. I never heard any of what any of the rest of those people were reading. I only heard and remembered what I had read. So kind of in that same context, you know. So I never gave up though. And where I'm going with this is I found a way to work around it, but it would have been so much easier. Like, this is back when people didn't talk about it. You know, dyslexia was really not much of a thing. And by the way, I wasn't even aware that I was until I was like 19. So well after the fact of the really hard years in school, growing up, like the learning to read years and so on.
Right.
So yeah. So, but what I'm getting at is, I don't think anyone should be giving up on there is a better way, and you can figure out a way to get ahead. It's often something that I find that, and we've talked about this before, is that there are people who don't have the idea. Well, we'll go back to your situation. That you guys, like most people out there, you kind of felt like you needed to have yourself sorted out financially in order to go see an advisor. And we'll come back to that in a minute. But where I was going with sharing about, I have some financial experiences, but regarding the dyslexia, is what it comes down to is your focus and your willingness to commit, right? So um, Kendra, you actually
referred to it. Yeah.
you referred to it earlier. Yeah. Sorry, my brain's moving faster than my mouth is moving today. Maybe I need some more coffee.
No.
Maybe less.
Yeah.
So, see, everyone, we're all human. We're
Yep.
all making mistakes. So, but specifically what you referred to is you referred to your commitment to each other. So so the first part of commitment, as one of the fundamental requirements of how to get resolution in this part of your lives, is first, it's going to be your commitment to your partner. Next, it's going to be your commitment to your financial future. And then eventually your commitment to me. And we'll kind of come back to that. So I want to take those each one at a time. So to you, Kendra and Jerremy, what about your commitment to each other really prompted it? You kind of touched on it, but you guys made a commitment to each other to have a major overhaul done on your financials. What was that like? Talk to us about that.
Who wants to
Go
go
ahead,
first?
Jer. You.
I think for me it was, and we hit on it a little bit. It was, we wanted to start a family, and we felt like, we had to have our financial situation in a strong place, and we had a lot of credit card debt. We had 2 car loans. We had a mortgage. Pretty standard stuff. But I mean, it's all debt, and part of the credit card hole. I mean, it wasn't a big hole, but I mean, it was still, it was a 5-figure number, and that was what really held me back from saying, all right, let's have kids. Like, we can do this. And so I think it was really just us agreeing and talking about what does our situation need to be in order so that we're comfortable with starting a family. That was probably the big thing for us as far as commitment goes.
I agree, and I think when we started talking with you, Julianne, and sought you out at Chad's referral, but also it kind of just came at the perfect time, because I think I had this expectation that once we combined forces, things would stabilize. Oh, we're a 2-income couple. We're limiting, like paying rent and him paying mortgage, like things could like stabilize.
Oh, I forgot to add too.
And I think,
I don't mean to interrupt, but I forgot to add, we also have 2 education loans as well out there.
Yeah,
so.
Pretty big student loans, one of which well, that's fine. Anyways, but we were 2 years in to kind of my expectation that things would be like in a better spot, and that we'd have like more
Stability.
Yeah, more stability, but just also like more room to spend. Like we wouldn't just be living like kind of paycheck to paycheck. We weren't quite there, but we were a little bit to the point of almost spending beyond what we were bringing in. And that felt like a desperate situation to stay in, while also maybe wanting to expand our family. So for us and our commitment to each other, to really wanting to grow as a family, it really was, well, what's going to give us the most stability? And we obviously weren't the experts. So I think that one of the things that we both recognized is that we're not financial advisors. it's not our industry. It's not where we spend our day. But it's a huge part of what our relationship and our family was looking at. So I think it was not a difficult leap for us to include you in how we got out of all of that mess, or to pursue, advisement on how to get out.
Yeah, and you already touched on just now really the next question I was going to have, which is your commitment was to each other because you wanted to have more of you.
Yeah.
That was really the major driving force, and how financially responsible of you to really recognize that, with the level of debt that you were servicing at the time, because that's really what it is. You're servicing debt.
Yeah.
And trying to pay it down, but the conventional way of doing it, just that doesn't, that didn't fly. But so your commitment to each other, the other piece of it is your commitment to your financial future. Like that's, some people can get very motivated for a short period of time, but you made a commitment.
Yeah.
Talk about that, like to your financial future. Like, okay, well, you could have gotten out of debt. We could have handled that hurdle alone, and we'll get to more possibility in a second. But talk about that a little bit.
For me, what immediately comes to mind when you ask that question is our very first meeting, and the way that you talked about life. And there's always going to be something that needs to be financed. There's always going to be, you need a new car, the refrigerator breaks, you need to replace the water heater, it's time to redo the roof. Like there's always going to be something. You're never going to be you never know what that year is going to hold. So maybe your income is consistent, but your expenses you just never know. You just never know. One year it might be a crazy medical year and you have all these medical bills, and the next year it might be, everything in the house breaks. And when you were explaining that to us the very first time that we met, it was kind of like, that should be like known, like as you're living life, as you're getting older, as you're, starting to pay bills, it should be kind of like, oh yeah, this is just this is adulting. Welcome to adulting.
This is what happens.
But it kind of was like an aha moment for me, because Jerremy and I are both in industries where we're not going to make millions of dollars every year. Like we're in good jobs, we have good income, but we're not like going to get these like crazy bonuses, or it's not like one year we're just going to all of a sudden see this flush of income. So I really was after that stability. And I think that realizing that, yeah, we could get ahead, we could eliminate debt, we could be short-term motivated to be in a better position for having a baby, but what was going to be the right solution to be in the right position for any decision that we wanted to make after that. It wasn't like, oh, okay, now we're in a good spot, we're good with having a kid. What if we want another kid? What if we stay in Chicago and want to, send them to private school? What does it look like to be able to afford that and, live where we live? It's like, I don't know, it was an aha moment for me to be like, oh, we're going to need to finance not just where we're at. We're not just need to fix the mess we're in. We need to figure out a plan for the messes we're going to be in, the things that are going to come up, the situations that are going to happen. So for me, it was a very much an aha moment when you were like, yes, there's tools so that you can finance all the things for the rest of your life. And I was like, wait, what? It's not just credit cards that can do that, you know? So yeah.
I think the other side of it too is having a tool that leaves something behind for your children and potentially your children's children, and being able to pass on that tool, that wealth, whatever you want to call it, just that you're thinking about that at the same time. So you have this tool that you can use as a financial tool in the meantime, but at the same time is doing work for you for that future passing on of wealth.
Your legacy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
So the fact that there's a tool that can do those two things at the same time, it's obviously appealing. So,
Well, you'd be shocked at how many people it isn't, but it's mostly because they don't know, just like you guys, right?
Yeah, we just didn't know.
Yep.
I mean, I think our mindset had been we have to keep working so that we have money, instead of there's a way for your money to work for you if you are using the right tools. And that it was a shift in mindset to and it took us a while to get there. But it was immediately or kind of abundantly clear once we had all of this knowledge that you shared, that there were other ways to pursue that financial stability.
The level of commitment that I have earned over the last 11 years through this process, I would have to say, sort of a question. You kind of already addressed it, but it's the fact that this is something that, and you shared this earlier, just kind of on a little tangent here, because you shared something with me before about your education and how you got that through this process. I don't quite know how to ask you the question right now. Maybe I'll wait till we get to possibilities. Let's do that. We'll just wait until, because you also mentioned that earlier, and I want to come back to it.
Yeah.
But one of the fun things, kind of in the other side of commitment, is what I find to be what makes it fun for me in working with people is the contrarian mindset of the type of people who migrate to me or enjoy working with me, or are willing to have the epiphanies that can come with that. It's funny because, we've been talking about long term, right? Having a long term mindset that's essential, really. But also the fact that, in that first meeting when you were talking about it, Kendra, one of the things I use to filter kind of an ideal connection with somebody is people who have not just a long-term mindset, long-term. That kind of comes out though over time, but really it's more about my ability to be able to commit to you and bring my A game, like bring it all, because the characteristics that I'm really migrating toward are those people, and those of you out there that are watching this, you know who you are. The characteristic is, you tend to question how it's always been done, right? You have a tendency to question, well, this is just the way we've always done it. There's only one way. Incidentally, wealthy people never do it the way everyone else does it. There's
Right.
a reason why why they're so wealthy. So take that into consideration, right? But to you guys, how does the contrarian mindset, whether you consider yourselves contrarian mindset people or not, how has that helped you through the financial, let's say, overhaul or shift or process, however you'd like to refer to it? How has that helped you, or is it a piece?
Go ahead, Kendra, you can go.
Um, I feel like there's so many different ways I could answer this. But,
Start with one and go through them all. I don't care.
The first thing that comes to mind is just that I don't have a lot of trust in, oh, this is the way it works, or this is the way it's always been done. I didn't want to believe that the only way to build wealth was having enough capital to go play in the stock market, to go like start, moving money around and guessing at where it's going to make the most money. I also didn't ever, I mean, just maybe how I grew up, but I just never had an assumption that I'd get rich quick, or that that the path of least resistance was the right path, or that the shortest path to a solution was the right path. And I'll go back to the path analogy that I used earlier, where you just showed us a way. And I feel like what you showed us was, here's a different path to follow. Here's a different set of tools to use. Here's a different way to go. And then what was most effective for us in that was that you let us go at our own pace. Instead of saying, okay, I expect you to be here by now, or making unrealistic promises, right? Where I feel like I always had this assumption in my mind that a financial advisor would be like, well, if you do this, this, and this, then your returns by year 4 are going to be like just through the roof, and kind of making all of these guarantees that they can't control. And you never did that. You said, here are tools that will get you into a better place. Here's what the numbers say. Here's a pace that might work. You challenged us. You came back at us when we were like, we don't want to do that. And you were like, no, you do want to do this. And that's where that contrarian piece of it came in, but it was never, your contrarian approach was never off-putting to me. It was always very educational to me. It was always like, actually, I didn't know to even ask that question. I didn't know to look at it that way. And I think for me, in my financial education, it was just completely eye-opening to be like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about it that way before. I didn't know. I hadn't been educated on it in that way. So it was for people that are highly educated in the finance space, maybe it could feel more contrarian. For me, it was just like, oh, no, I just didn't know that. Cool. Well, let's go that way. So
Yeah, I think on my side, very, very, very similar what Kendra just said, but I think the first thing was just where coming back to, maybe I wasn't contrarian at the beginning, but just coming back to where our finances were and just being like, is everybody like this? Like, how is this sustainable? How is anybody getting by if this is how we're supposed to be doing things? And that's really when the questioning started. And then to me, again, the importance of the education side of it, that's really what then made me start to swim upstream. And so just being completely fed with that and bits and pieces and just reinforcement from you and kind of, again, just being that person that's keeping us accountable by aligning us properly with just knowing your options, knowing, hey, if you didn't think about this, well, make sure you consider this if you're going to make this move. And again, not in a forceful way whatsoever. It was more of in an encouraging way, or as, again, an accountable way. So, hey, as a reminder, make sure you account for this when you're thinking this through before you make the decision. So that only just reinforced going the other direction. So.
Yeah, a very specific example, I think, is when we had one meeting and Jared came with like, I just really wish we didn't have a 30-year fixed mortgage. And you were like, wait, what?
No. It was at the time, if you don't mind, it was the interest only.
Yeah, 5-year ARM, interest only. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were like, why would that be a problem? I don't. It was just like we hadn't looked at it from the viewpoint that you had, and it was just the contrarian was just getting the education that we needed.
Well, that's a great example, though, and kind of leads into my next point, is the fact that, or something I wanted to cover, is the fact that your perception of what the rest of the world out there perceives as this is the way you're supposed to do this right now. Yep. Like for a while, what was it? Oat brand or whatever was the big thing. And then it was non-fat everything. And then it was full fat everything. Like it didn't matter, it's like, okay, well, they keep changing what the formula is on how you're supposed to, like in that conversation about how you're supposed to, lose weight or whatever.
Right.
What I heard you saying, Kendra, and then you also backing up on Jerremy, is it seems contrarian, but once you got yourselves educated, really what I heard Kendra saying is that she loved the certainty of it, like what you're up to. It's like, okay, well, I don't have to, gamble. I don't have to, but I have confidence because of the fact that I've taken responsibility, and I am accountable to my spouse, and I'm accountable to my financial future. And the fact that we made a commitment to each other that this is long-term also, all of which can be very contrarian in the world.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, what I love so much, and what everyone should be getting from this, is the fact that the Fosses are a perfect example of what we're talking about, because they have made those commitments and they were very, very clear, which is why I feel like there's just such a helpful example to share this information. What I'd like to move into is, you talked about it early on, Kendra, is possibility. So this is kind of fun. This is the fun part, because you talked about, what you never thought possible. And then now, we'll break this up. So we'll talk about the before, which we talked about a little bit. Jerremy, you talked about some of that.
Yeah.
And then the after, right? And then the moonshot, like where we're going next. And maybe as you put it, Kendra, the impossible. Now, what currently has occurred as possible for you seems like it probably, you alluded to it, is that was an impossible before. So describe, Jerremy, you did this a little bit before, but so let me make sure that I've got this straight, because really what I was going to ask you is to give us a financial picture of what it looked like before. So So it was the consumer debt. I mean, this is kind of the every American, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
in your own word, I'll let you guys sort of deliver it. Let's flush out what the, at a high level, what the pain points were. And obviously we know what the reason was, primarily because you wanted to start a family.
Yeah.
But let's start with what it looked like coming into it.
Sure.
Well, so yeah, we mentioned before.
Just to revisit the pain. Sorry.
Yeah. So lots of debt from various, normal life things. I mean, the consumer debt piece, I mean, I don't think that's supposed to be normal life. Obviously, we were living a little bit outside of our means, but also when there was an emergency, that was the way to get out of the emergency. So really not a lot of financial margin at all.
Right.
Trying to do the standard, if we've got 3 months of income to live off of, in case there's ever a problem. Well, we didn't have that because we were paying bills. I mean, it was always a goal of ours to have some backup money in something so that we could draw from that in case there was an issue. But we were struggling to have that, and at the time, it just felt like we just could not get ourselves in a position to start to build some of that, let alone, I mean, at the time, we'll get into that here too. I mean, I have 401k with my company. So, I mean, there was money going there. So there's savings there, but that's also money, as everybody knows, that you can't touch that until you retire. So that's where it is. So yes, there were savings, but it was savings in that kind of vehicle that we could take advantage of. Unless you wanted to take a loan out and you're paying more interest. For banking. So it just wasn't a fun situation to be in.
I think that's really important, Jerremy, to point out the fact, I was just right before you said it, I was thinking about that, is the fact that to everyone out there listening, they were doing all the other right things too. Like they weren't just carrying a beast of burden of debt. Like they were doing all the other right things that they were told that they were supposed to do. 401ks, and some of you out there. So 401ks, IRAs, all of those types of things. But we're talking about needing capital to be able to function in your world without having to service debt to someone outside of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add to it too. I mean, lifestyle-wise, I don't want people to get the idea like we're trying to live some lavish lifestyle outside of our means either. Like that wasn't it. Even having a mortgage for a, so we were in Chicago and we had a 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo downtown, and as part of that was 2006, and so we kind of felt like, well, I got to get in. If I don't get in, well, then I'm gonna miss out. And so of course I was one of those people that bought in at that time, like I something. And so 1-bedroom, 1-bath to me was not, based on what I paid versus what was in the market, it was not that extravagant. I was just trying to get in the market at that time. So I just want to make that clear for everyone.
Anything to add, Kendra?
No, I mean, it's just exactly what I said earlier, that I was poor coming into our relationship. I was not, I was barely making above poverty line from an income standpoint. So I think that as a young couple, and not every couple is coming into a relationship in that way, where Jerremy was more stable and had more like regular income and more regular savings, and I was like working 5 part-time jobs. So that's not everybody's situation, but I feel like where we were at was not uncommon in that it was, we're trying to stabilize and trying to do all the right things to stabilize and just couldn't. We're not seeing that happen by doing all of the right things. So.
Well, and I think that's really key that you say that, and you guys don't see it, but I see it all the time. Uh, Kendra's alluded to this in the past, that it's like you didn't say anything, but you already knew where this was going. But it's along those lines of the fact that you are correct, but there are a lot of people out there that are probably going to be able to watch this and identify with exactly what you're talking about right now. So it's really, I appreciate you sharing that. Here's what I'd like to know. I'd like to know, describe what happened when you realized, because really, okay, so we talked about the fact that it really starts with really trust, but frankly, if we want to translate that, that's actually faith, right? So, so with your leap of faith, with your contrarian mindset and your long range thinking, the possibilities that you were creating or were hoping to create for yourselves, what did it take in order to know that it was working? At what point did you realize that the process was working? Like, we made it? And because I know, and we can let the cat out of the bag. Yes, they do have 2 children, so you don't have to leave them hanging on that. And they're lovely. And but the fact that, you know, at what point did you guys kind of figure out, holy cow, you know, it was no longer on faith, it was on proof?
Yeah. Jerry, you go first, because our points were different, actually. We were talking about this morning, and I was
Okay.
like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
I think for me it was, I mean, when we first started and we were looking at our credit card debt, that was the first thing we were going after to, you know, to get rid of. And I mean, I'll throw the number out there. It was around $17,000, and we were trying to get rid of that. And so we set some plans up to borrow against ourselves to deal with that. And to see that that debt was gone, even though we were having to pay ourselves back, but that debt was gone from a credit card company in 3 years. That's when I was like, oh my gosh, we did that in 3 years. Like, it just, and then that windfall from that, just having that to then continue to pay ourselves off versus paying a credit card company interest, we were directing all that back towards us. And so that was for me the big moment of, wow, this really works. And then, as you know, I mean, from there, after that, it was this car payment, it was that car payment, to the point where what we had left was just student debt. And at a certain point, my student debt was gone, and all we had left was Kendra's. Well, we had the mortgage too, of course, but
Right.
that was another animal to tackle. But
Mm-hmm.
that first one, that by year 3, when just having that moment of, I mean, I knew it was going down each year, so we knew it was working. It's just that not until it was gone was like, oh my gosh, that worked. So that was my aha moment.
Did you have a plan in place as to at what point? Because I never asked you this. Did either of you have a spot in mind when you were going to say, like, was it okay if we have a plan? We'll start a family, or was it just a point of being out of indebtedness? Like, how did you, Kendra? I promise I'll let you answer the other question, but I'm curious of this when you mentioned that.
I would say that once we had a plan that we were both confident in, you know, it's like once we started down the path, it was like, okay, now we're not just like grasping at straws, trying to figure out what could work and stepping into the unknown. It was like, we have a plan, stick to the plan, see it through, walk on this path, keep going on this path. I think that for me was like, okay, let's have kids now.
TikTok.
TikTok.
So, Kendra, what was your aha moment, or your holy cow, this is working?
not unlike Jared, like seeing all that debt going down, that was huge. That was a big win, I guess. But for me, it was when we had a close friend that needed help, and we were the only people in their circle that had anything to offer in terms of help, and
Financial help.
financial help. Yeah. And, it was a pickle. It was a gross, like, pay to play pickle. And there was a significant financial need there, and we had it available to help. And yeah, we could have used our money differently, or we could have just kept stockpiling that. But for me, what was so incredible that had felt impossible, was that we were able to be generous in a way that made a significant impact on that family. And it wasn't, they didn't ask for it. It wasn't like, it didn't feel like a handout. It was just, we had the ability to be generous when it was needed. And we had never been in that position before. Jeremy often wants to like kick me under the table, like, stop giving away all our money. Like, I'm maybe a little too like generous. But we'd never been in a position to actually be generous in that way. And so that we came upon this situation and had the ability to do it without feeling pain, without it impacting our day to day, without it being like well, if we do that, we can't, go on this vacation. It was, oh yeah, we can help. That for me was the, like, this is awesome. This works. And I love it.
That's huge. I mean, you weren't put in a position of either or, not to mention the fact that you then, what I'm hearing you say is that it's so clear to me, which is so beautiful, is the fact that, and this is the stuff that brings me joy about what it is that I do. The fact that you both went from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. And then that's where you live now. Like now, so now we can talk a little bit about the moonshot, right? So because all of these things, starting a family, being in a position when literally nobody else was in a position to help that friend out of a very strange, random situation.
Yeah.
That really was very critical financially, and being in a very solvent position to be able to do that. Also getting rid of all of your liabilities and obligations. We have left out one big one, the forever home. Before I get to the moonshot, perhaps we should talk about what helped you to, I mean, like that's a big one, right?
Yeah.
Like, what has this afforded you the opportunity in your life? Those other things, plus what you never dreamt possible. The house is maybe part of the moonshot already.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
Jump in. Someone
You
share.
want me to go?
Yeah. Go for it.
So, I mean, the short story is we were in Chicago, got an opportunity to move up to St. Paul, and as part of just where we were financially at the time, a lot better position. We did not have that condo, so we'd sold that, and we had just been accruing cash value in our policies. It's just been growing for a little while there, and as part of that move to the St. Paul area, one of the things that we always wanted to have, even when we were in Chicago, which was just not feasible, for what we wanted at least, was an old home, like a vintage old home. And
Vintage.
It's
well,
awesome.
I mean, 1887. So just but being able to afford and invest into something like that, like it just wasn't going to happen where we were. And with our movement to St. Paul, we had the cash on hand to be part of making that a reality. That was, there's no other way we would have been able to afford this thing. Yes, there were some other interesting pieces as part of that, but that's a whole nother podcast.
We'll do that one. We'll do that one because we've got 4 minutes. I want to ask you a couple of questions. Yeah. But it's your forever home, right?
It's our forever home. We're literally not. This was essentially our dream home. So
yeah.
I'll add that it wasn't a dream that I had actually ever afforded myself, to be in a home like what now that we're in, and that we're now in it and are affording it, and is beyond what I could have dreamed, because people will ask, oh, well, but it's your dream home, it's your forever. And I was like, I didn't ever dream this big. I didn't ever dream this big. And it is a big home, but not just size wise, but like just what it is. I would have been fine. I barely let myself dream about like a 1,200 square foot bungalow, and it's more than that. So it went beyond. It was the impossible. It was bigger than what I would have dreamed.
And I don't want to say like the size of the house is the important piece. That wasn't it at all. Like this house was really just something, for our family, but also a way that we can share it with others too. And so to be able to, that's probably more important on that end of things, is that it's a house that we want to be taken advantage of for, people coming over, just good company, versus different community organizations, you name it, our local church, just taking advantage of it and just being able to be in that position to provide something like that we can share. We wouldn't have been able to do that without this. So
as we wrap up here, what I love is exactly what you guys have shared. Now that you are in control of, let's put it this way, you're in control of your debt, because still obviously we have things that you have to afford, which is exactly what Kendra mentioned at the very beginning of this. Being able to start a family, getting your forever home, being able to help out friends when need be. I know that you guys, and maybe it's going to be in our, maybe we'll do another one with you guys so we can dig a little deeper into some of the things that you're up to and some of your other moonshots, because the house is kind of an already moonshot, as we've talked about, but your ability to be able to now think other impossibles, like being able to additionally help other people, whether it's the ways to help finance missionaries, or you guys are what this has done is it has taken you guys outside of yourself. And I'm excited about the fact that not only, so for me, I'm excited to get up every day already with people like the Fosses in my life, because it proves to me that what my purpose and my cause on this earth are is to eradicate the sense of impossibility. And they've already, as you've just heard, we've talked about the possible and the impossible that they've already eradicated for themselves, and that they're already living beyond what they expected. Like, they didn't win the lottery. They're living very normal lives. They have very happy existence in their careers. That wasn't necessarily always the case, but they're a perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about, is that incapability is only a sense, and to help to eradicate that from the way that people think, it reminds me of a little story about a kid who had there was a bunch of starfish all over the shore, or the tide was out. I'm paraphrasing for lack of time. And, and he was walking along and he was grabbing them and he was throwing them back into the water, but there was tons of them. And so this guy walked up to him and said, "Hey, listen, you're not going to be able to help all of those." And his comment was, yeah, as he threw the one into the water, he goes, "But I helped that one." And so that's really very much what I'm about. And by taking action, once you eradicate the sense of incapability, and as Jerremy, you mentioned, aligning your actions with what you want to make possible is huge. And to, as you heard the Fosses say, that they didn't say it in so many words, but we've talked about it before. The fact that they like having somebody with a warrior spirit and as their super friend, being able to
For sure.
help them make sense of it all and make it happen. And I'm just so thrilled and so honored to be a part of that, to be on your family board of directors, if you will.
Yep. Absolutely.
And
Title
I
granted.
But I just, and Jerremy, you've talked about, your family business board of directors, as Jerremy often refers to them as basically they're running a business. And I can't thank you enough for being willing to share this with everyone, and your willingness to open your hearts and your dirty laundry bag to maybe help bring other people to the opportunity to be able to get this kind of peace and possibility in their own lives.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Do you have
Thanks for
any
having us.
last thoughts or anything that you'd like to make sure that people know?
I was just going to say, I feel like, I mean, as you've pointed out, I mean, the dirty laundry is part of our testimony. So being able to be open about that and share that, I mean, it's everybody else's testimony too, and it sort of defines a little bit of who you are. So don't be shy and don't be scared, because what do you have to lose? I mean, you really don't. I mean, the education piece is just, you can't make good decisions unless you have the education. And so having that is having that as somebody that cares that you're educated, like yourself, that's important. So
Thank you for that. All right, you guys, I love you very much. Thank you for your time. I look forward to seeing you soon in person.
yes, definitely.
Yes.
Have
Thank
a
you,
great day.
Julian.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.